that leads to something else that you had said that I wanted to touch upon, which was having people contribute. You know, I need this feature. I want something out of this project. I'm willing to participate, and I want to give this feature. And that's me participating. I'm helping the project. I'm adding features to the project. And while that's a true statement, there's an overhead with that feature, and that is the review. And we see maintainer burnout as a topic because, particularly in really popular projects, and OpenStack was a poster child for this problem of too few people doing reviews and being able to have the expertise to do that versus the number of blueprints and number of submissions that they were getting on any given release, that the backlog was significant. So the next step after contributing something is, again, if you want to help the project sustain, you start to do reviews. And that also builds influence because in the end, if you're a good reviewer and you understand a significant amount of the code base, you're often invited to be a committer. And that gains influence. That makes it easier for you to help your company get other features in because you know the dialect of the project, you know what they're after.
It also helps you in a much more direct way, which is like if you have people reviewing patches, you can catch things that are going to be a problem long before they hit you.
Exactly.
There's been a lot of talk lately about XZ, and oh no, there was this, actually malicious committer like pushing in over time harmful changes. It's like, well, the answer to that is to have all of the companies, depending on that project, have code reviewers in the project early on. That's the way you
plus
fix
one,
that.
-1. No, what's going on? Don't have to be a committer to actually have a voice. Exactly.
Yeah, and not just saying it, but actually like running the code, trying it out, poking at it from a security perspective, and yeah.
So here's the interesting rub. Those architects who have the time to do standards work and so forth, they're not in the same group as the product developers who have, 15 engineers trying to get those features out the door, part proprietary often and part open source. And because they're in that group of, I need to get this thing out the door, I have this tight deadline, they don't have time to do reviews. So again, it ties back into, you have a corporate structure that says that when you become a senior developer and you should be gaining influence in the company, you do it as an architect and you have influence in the internal network of professionals, developers within your organization. But to successfully be influential in that technology out in the world, you have to be able to do those reviews. And corporate structures, again, when they're not built to support that, it's back to the anthropomorphic problem of, here's an entire cultural structure that isn't really built to optimize for open source. And so it's a much bigger cultural change, right? And clearly I've thought about this for a long time, right? And trying to pick this apart into these analogies. And again, I know you've been around forever as well. So again, any experiences there, and does that thought process ring true to you? Have you thought it in those terms? And
it absolutely does. The way I often put it is, are you as a company rewarding your developer, your engineers, for their participation in the open source project? Like, do you recognize when they have done such good reviews that they become a core reviewer? Do you recognize that? Is that part of your review packet for promotions? Is their status external? And I don't mean it in like a blanket way, like I've had companies say, oh, we're number one in terms of hiring project leaders and such as, like, that's not meaningless metrics, but actually meaningful metrics, for your engineers developing their careers in the company. Make sure you recognize that community recognition of their technical expertise. Make sure you build that into your process. And it does happen on like a sporadic basis. Like, I was hired into Hewlett-Packard as a distinguished engineer. Hewlett-Packard does not hire people as distinguished engineers. You have to work your way up through the tiers. So they hired me at that level based on my open source experience. So they looked at my resume, all the projects I've been, leaders of, the boards I've served on, and like all of this. So they actually considered my open source experience in finding the right level for me and the company. And that is something that every company should be doing. Like if you aren't like asking for a section of open source experience from your engineers who have some involvement in open source, you're not actually fully recognizing your employees. You're not really appreciating them for what they've achieved.
Yep. And I'd even go so far as to say that even companies the size of Hewlett-Packard, you had pockets of cluefulness and the ability to do that, whereas other pockets, probably not so much.
Yes. Yeah. I stumbled on a good pocket. And that's true. I think that's true of a lot of companies. Like, I would never say that any company is entirely clueful or entirely clueless, but every company has clueful people and clueless people all jumbled up inside together.